Yeah, 100%. And I think we covered this really well in the podcast with Rachel. And there is so much opportunity, like we said, because a lot of the noise is quite poor quality at the moment. So even just simple things like you said, looking at whether you're doing the first sentence or the last sentence can make a huge difference and cut through that noise. And another thing that really stood out for me with the Rachel Goldstone podcast, with this whole building relevancy and personalization, was the way they were approaching people who had no presence online, and the fact that you can, really just use discovery calls, like sort of fact finding with other people in the business, was something that was really valuable. In that podcast, what were other pieces that really stood out for you personally, and things you think that you've seen in your day to day that you go, actually, yeah, that is making it a lot more relevant to me, more personal?
So, firstly, just to touch on what you said, the fact finding calls, I think it's a brilliant idea. It's something that I've been doing for a while. It's something that I've trained my teams to do for a long time. And that's been so useful. So, before, where I used to speak to CEOs and CROs about training and enabling their team, often a CRO might be quite detached from really what are the challenges, the boots on the ground. It's so powerful if I can reach out to an SDR and say, how did you find your onboarding? Take that feedback, give that to the CRO, and actually, instead of giving my messaging, I'm giving their own team's messaging. There's nothing that is more relevant than that. And I think sometimes there's a focus from companies on, we've got to speak to these three personas. These are the personas that we sell to. Yes, they're the personas that you sell to, but actually the messaging can become so much stronger if you're speaking to non-decision makers about the challenges that you're essentially the end users, right? Essentially the sellers or the end users that you're going to be that your product is going to be aimed at. I think the other thing that Rachel talked about that I thought was really really powerful was this concept of value plus buyer needs. And it doesn't sound super complicated right now, but I think it's, we focus a lot on how do we find the right pattern interrupt? How do we create value? How do we get personalized? And all of this, which is why I'm not personally a fan of ChatGPT, because it just like it becomes so robotic. And I think if you treat it as so formulaic like that, you really lose the human to human element that I think is so important, which is why I think companies like Lavender and even Thursday did so well, because they became so human, they became so real. And essentially, I think they've just generated trust. And I think that's what we don't really talk about that much in sales anymore, is this whole concept of trust.